It is very important to analyze the situation that we are living nowadays and how it has been, this international situation is being profiled nowadays. There's been important changes in the international scenario. We see the deepening in contradictions between a capitalistic and socialistic worlds, and we're going to explain what I'm referring to. Also, we are evidencing the coming back of the ideologies, how in the U.S. sphere with all its allies, again, they emphasize that they are countries that are free, democratic, that respect human rights. And this is when we have the criticism of China, because they think of China, so all those values are not respected. So this has made to deepen the conflict between China and the U.S. because, like we will see, the U.S. now feels a great fear of the economic growth of China, that its presence internationally and how China has been able to penetrate the international institutions and agencies, and how through China China has been able to express the problems that affect the world of this 21st century. So this pandemic of COVID-19 that we have all suffered since 2020, and also has contributed to make like a weird relationship between China and the United States. As I said before, the U.S. government is defending its values. Well, they say we are a democratic countries when we have free elections where the electorate at the end is the one that decides or who will govern them. Also, we put emphasis that our people are well, that they have a good life with all the services they need, and of course, that they are aware that the human rights are advocated, that the liberal ideas are advocated. Well, on the contrary, the Chinese government say that they have the right to advocate their own system, a different that not necessarily is equal to that of the system of capitalistic worlds. A Communist Party is the one that decides the policies. Why this Communist Party is the revolutionary period has tried to take out the Chinese people from poverty and prove that is not inferior to any other country, that they can take benefit of all the abilities they have and show the world that they can, in a medium term, become in a developed country. China as well is necessary to make adjustments, so there will be a wealth distribution, wealth that was accrued during the economic reform period since the 80s, when Deng Xiaoping started the measures to open the Chinese economy and to make foreign trade have a very important role during this process. And with this motto that we had back then, when Deng Xiaoping said that, told the population to work and make themselves rich, because we want the Chinese people have everything that they didn't have before. But as the problems continue, and during the 90s, we see a China that has demands more international protection. China that manages to have its products in many countries, in different continents. A China that is no longer afraid of the participation of international agency. A China that is learning on how to move within these international agencies or institutions, not only for their own benefit, but also for the benefit of all these developing countries. And we see this when the International Monetary Fund, the Global Bank, or the World Bank, and this is when we feel the presence of China. But when at the beginning of the 21st century and China realizes that it has a very important growth and the developed countries are afraid of China, well, China at the end has benefited from the economic systems of other countries since Second World War. So it's necessary that has to be a responsible country and assume everything related to the benefits that will provide to that world. And this is when we see a China that is aware that it is an upgrading power, and Hu Jintao back then said, yes, China at some point in time will be able to lead the world, but this power will not be like the former ones, like leading the world with weapons. No, we will have a different China. So we see how the international system is being challenged. It's been said that China also can say how a new system can be established, in which not only China will have an important role, but also where China could say what can be or cannot be done. So we have seen how the economy of the Popular Republic of China has had important increases during the era of the reform, where it managed to have annual growth of 10% and sometimes more. But as we see the economy since 2012, when Xi Jinping started leading, we see the decrease, the annual growth normally is between 7 and 6%. But in 2021, after experiencing all the dark period of 2020, because of the progress of COVID-19, we will see how in the first quarter China recovered. It grew 18.3% with respect to the same period of the previous year, and in the second quarter was 7.9%. So this tells us not because of all the measures taken to fight against the expansion of COVID-19, but the next measures were taken not to have the expansion of the virus in big cities, and otherwise it will be in the need to close the cities to fight against the virus. So you know that this leads to problems at an international level. What we see is that the Chinese government has known how to take corrective measures, but also has put a lot of interest that the economy, that at the end will be able to have growth, a moderate growth. President Xi Jinping, the secretary of the Communist Party in China, he took the reins of the power at the end of 2012, and then as a president at the beginning of 2013, he realized that the economic reform has given China the projection to abroad, the presence, international presence, that obviously has improved the life quality of many different sectors of the Chinese society, but also there's been inequality. We see there's inequality among these people that have been the winner of those reform process, the big businesses that out of scratch they were able to have great fortunes, and also their companies had international projection in 2021, and a middle class that little by little was able to grow, to get stronger, and it is a very important segment of the Chinese society. But also we have the other part, where the Chinese that receive a salary do not see great progress in the improvement of their lives. They are tied to a job with a salary, and they cannot buy what they see in the stores. There's also a village, these people that live in the field, and those villages that they have needs that still they haven't been able to develop themselves. And this is very important when we talk about the field, how different municipalities started to specialize, and they were able to make progress, to grow significantly, but the inequality was present. That is why Xi Jinping started to say the development has to be for and for the people, and we have to work so the prosperity could be a common prosperity. So the work that has been done to take out from poverty to like millions of people, this has been acknowledged in China by the international community. 700 million people were taken out from poverty. And the criticism made by the Americans, let's say China has benefited from the globalization, and China said yes, but we also have realized contributions to the world. Only the work that we have done, so many millions of Chinese will improve their lives. And this is a work that has implied a lot of effort from the Chinese government. When COVID-19 expanded in China and in the rest of the world, China immediately started to react. And once the vaccination was ready, it was distributed to several countries, and also there was technical support to these countries. Let us remember how in Europe, since 2020, the pandemic, China sent experts, medical staff, it sent products, face masks, to help the European countries that were in need. So China has been doing an important job in this sense. And as I said before, at the same time it was fighting against the virus, they were fighting against the expansion of the virus, because it mutated. So that's why they kept working in more efficient vaccines to fight against the different strains, and also has promoted the equitable distribution of vaccinations and the global cooperation against COVID-19. What we have seen during the pandemic is this big inequality between the developed countries that have their own companies that produce vaccination produced in millions, and they have the capability of having a massive vaccination.
Let's see, just as United States, they are on the third doses of the vaccine, while other countries not even have access to the first. Therefore, China says we need to promote equalitarian distribution of vaccines and global cooperation against COVID-19. This is a global problem, not a problem of a single country. And it won't be resolved blaming on others, saying you were the one who spread the virus. It's useless. We need to look for a way to fight it. We need to look for a way of resolving the problems that this virus has brought for everybody. Now, among the U.S. conflict, we have seen how from the era of Donald Trump, how this president started with open attack against China, blocking technology companies, attacking Chinese citizens in the U.S., accusing them of being spies, on how he imposed high economic sanctions, having as a result that the Chinese government did the same, and they started establishing measures that were precisely related to making feel the United States that they could also use these weapons against that country. Therefore, we can see that economic competition is very important. United States wants to block the growth of China. They do not want this project to advance, in which China has focused getting support on technology, support on the progress of technological advances, and then they want to depend less from abroad supplies. At the end, this has become a weapon of the United States, which is used against the Chinese. And when they knew that Joe Biden was going to win, there were big expectations. They thought it was going to be just like Barack Obama. He was tough with China, but they also had some agreements and always respectful of those things that were related precisely with China's sovereignty. But no, we started to see a Biden that said we need to be careful about China. China is a country that competes with the United States, that want to take its place as a superpower. Therefore, what shall we do? We need to fight them. We need to block it so they do not continue advancing. And they say that they shouldn't be using the technology of U.S. companies and subsidiaries for their benefit. Then what does Biden make? He continues with the trade war started by Donald Trump. They continue saying that, sorry, she's cutting badly. And that's why we need to work with this Trumpist rhetoric that Chinese do not take away their jobs. So they see China as a threat, and they focus that they are ruled by a communist government. So we have the return of ideology. Instead of talking to Chinese leaders as representatives, they focus that they are members of the Communist Party ruling the country. And as we said before, all this is in this technological war. How are we going to block China so they do not progress? How are we going to make the companies not to have the same influence that they are having in different countries? How are we going to block them? We have seen how we have had meetings between U.S. and China representatives. We saw how in March 2021 they gathered in Alaska, Antony Blinken and China's counterparts, the diplomat and Chinese Yang Zhutiu and the Foreign Affairs Wang Yi. What do we see there? That U.S. representatives start with recriminations. They start with attacks against Chinese representatives. And the interesting factor here is that Chinese representatives answer in the same way, defending their position. And we see an important change here. In the past, Chinese leaders in meetings were really subtle, trying not to provoke the U.S. But now they say, no, this is a different China. This China is powerful, and we are not going to let the U.S. to treat blocking their growth, to mind China's businesses. So we saw Yang too to say, mind your business. Do not give us lessons when you have lots of issues in your country. In July 2021, we are going to see how another representative, Wendy Sherman, went to China, and we saw how Chinese leaders told them, you do not understand the position of China, you are attacking, and they presented a list of complaints showing that United States want to block China's progress. And then when Biden started his administration, he had a conversation with Xi Jinping, and we also saw recently how they had a telephone conference, but they cannot reach agreements. They cannot reach agreements when you start recriminating something. Obviously, this is closing the communication channel. That's why even when those are high-level conversations, at the end, they reach nowhere. We have also seen how in May 2021, Kirk Campbell in the United States said that this is it, that the period of commitment from the U.S. with China is over. All this, as I said before, has really made more difficult this bilateral relationship. But Chinese leaders always answer to the U.S. accusations. When the United States says, the Communist Party says what it's done or not in China, and that is limiting the freedom of people. And then they make theirs foreign technology and they take advantage of that. They do not honor human rights. They do not observe the population human rights in Hong Kong. The Uyghur population in Xinjiang, nor Hong Kong population. And what they have been doing is to repress political parties, and they are establishing a very similar system to the one of the rest of China. This implies that they are not fulfilling what they established in the basic law of the Hong Kong Constitution when they negotiated the return of Hong Kong to China. And what does China says? Well, they say that the United States has not honored its obligation with its own citizens. Why? Because the government did not know how to manage the pandemic. They let it grow in different cities of the United States, and a lot of U.S. citizens died due to that handling of the pandemic. And they say, why they critic us if they have a police force violating rights of people, punishing Black, Latino, Asian citizens living in the United States. So they should first control their policy brutality. And on TV, we have seen how white citizens start insulting black citizens, on how police brutally treats people thinking that they are criminals and are black. So they have a lot of problems. And now, when they have this confrontation in presidential debate, how Trump encourages people to make those riots in the Capitol. And they have a lot of problems, and they are not resolving. And then they criticize others. Now, talking about the technological war, as we said at the beginning, U.S. wants to block technological advance of China, attacking ZTE, Huawei, and other Chinese companies, imposing sanctions, saying that they are not complying with standards, saying that subsidiaries of Chinese companies are not giving what they need, microchips and everything they need for components, cell phones, etc. However, what figures say is that China has the biggest 5G network all over the world. Until June 2021, they had more than 960 5G stations, representing 70% of base stations of 5G. This is not little. Then we are seeing that at different fronts, problems are increasing between China and the United States. And Taiwan, the island, we're seeing how it is also a source of conflict. A long history since China Popular Republic was established in 1949, and the nationalist government of Chiang Kai-shek went to seek for refugee with 2 million of people, including people of the army. We can see how this problem started to rocket. It is true that in January 1950, Truman president said that U.S. was not going to intervene to defend or attack South Korea, North Korea, but in 1952 they said, Taiwan is really important for the United States. We consider it as a place where we can establish our bases, so we are going to defend Taiwan so Chinese communists do not take this island or surrounding island that also belong to the government, like Jimen and Perku, Benhum and Matsu, Kemoy and Matsu, and Penhu Islands. So we can see that since the 50s this problem developed, and we will always have the ships in that strait, and that's why this problem has prevailed up to now. And now Biden's government is following the same strategy as Donald Trump. They are giving concessions to that government established at Taiwan since 2016 is ruled by the opposition, by the Progressive Democratic Party, being a party which at its platform wants to have the island independence. Taiwan, the president, is a person that worked a lot with Lita Wei, the president who managed Taiwan to come far away from China, and that proclaimed that Taiwan and China were two different states. This woman is ruling Taiwan, and what they want is that United States support them not only to have better position at international level, because Taiwan cannot have relationships with countries that have relationships with China. They have very few allies, small countries. But now what they have been doing, U.S. officers, is trying to provide this support so Taiwan can participate in international relationships, thing that has not been possible to do it where they need the state quality to participate. We have seen how in the government of Ma Ying-jeou that was close to China and that had a lot of influence in the economic relationship in Taiwan Strait and had also an interview with Xi Jinping. They had an agreement with the Chinese government not to continue the international bloc. But I repeat, when the opposition came, again we had this war, and we can see how China still says that Taiwan's affairs is an internal affair and that the U.S. should not mind their business. We have also seen how U.S. officials have defended Taiwan's democracy because they say they have elections, political parties. One opposition party can win. And that was precisely what Jiang Jinping, the Chiang Kai-shek's son, wanted at the end of the 80s, when they started to develop the idea that they needed to free the political system and left behind authoritarianism to have doors where they can pass and have more presence at international level. And as we said before, China is very strict in terms of sovereignty. And they always focus on saying that Taiwan is part of China and this is an internal affair. Then, what has been happening is that we can see how Chinese officers are more certain. They are more aggressive, more assertive, defending their government positions. Even when China does not want any confrontation, they are not willing to give in vital aspects of their integrity and territory sovereignty. China does not want confrontation precisely because they know that the U.S. is still powerful regarding weapons, nuclear weapons, and therefore, knowing that militarily they are superior, they do not want confrontation. What China has done is to strengthen their army. They have also tried to develop army technology and have better weapons. Additionally, they have worked a lot to have their ships or transatlantic not only in Taiwan Strait but also at the South China Sea, where they have territory disputes with several countries. Their dispute with Japan with the Yaoyu China Island. Therefore, China says we need to develop our sea fleet and also their nuclear weapons and also and obviously professionalize their army. But also at the Maoist era, to encourage these principles to defend the country, that they need to work on the goals of the nation, of the Chinese nation. Then what we are seeing is the scenery where we are seeing increasingly a confrontation. China does not want that, but they are not going to give in. When they are attacked. Here we can see nuclear submarines, ballistic missile of nuclear fusion, and these are other submarines of nuclear propulsion. US has most of both categories, then Russia, then China, and you can see a big difference with the United States, then United Kingdom, then France, and then at the end, India. For this reason, we have seen President Xi Jinping at different international forums. For example, when he was at the Davos Forum, he says that China is using innovation as the force to foster development and remove bottlenecks. And they said that China was in pro of an open economy, and he also focused on the multilateralism focus. The new China's ambassador in the US, Gao ambassador, has also mentioned that both countries should strengthen their relationships and rebuild dialogue mechanisms. But Biden's government has been doing the following. They have tried to convince their allies in Europe, in Asia, to gather forces against China. Recently, you might have heard news on how finally they made the August Agreement, which is the acronym of Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States. What they pretend is to defend their interests at the Indian Pacific region. An interesting fact is that the US committed to provide Australia with technology to build their first nuclear propulsion submarines. Then, this is really important because the United States had not done that since they passed the technology to the United Kingdom. So it means that the United States is helping other countries to strengthen themselves and then offer resistance to China's advance. All this leads us to the following. We can conclude that certainly the world is experiencing a very dangerous stage that, yes, it can lead to a new Cold War. In China, we have also seen important changes. As we mentioned, inequality in the country, the fortunes of businessmen. Then, Xi Jinping, president, has tried to control these businessmen, remove privileges from them, and therefore they have critics against these companies that only look for earnings, as leaders say that they are not looking for the specific benefits of the country. But they have also started a campaign where the Communist Chinese Party is saying to different sectors of the population, watch out your living standards, how you emulate what's done in Western countries, the way they dress, the music they hear to, their way of thinking, mindset, and different options that are present in fashion, soap, operas, and everything that has permeated China's culture in the last years. Xi Jinping says it is about time to put some order here. Why? Because Chinese should think that it is not only personal life, but it is also the life of all the Chinese peoples. Xi Jinping says we need to distribute wealthy in an equal manner, that everybody can enjoy about that. And this is really interesting because there are still sectors in the population which are limited, non-favored with their income, and they are really resentful against all these businessmen, all these people that have grown these fortunes, and that they can really go against their own people. Mao Zedong era, when everybody was the same, when there were no this so big differences in China's population. And this is the way in which we can see in an idealistic manner that period of the Chinese society. Xi Jinping says we need to start to mobilize all this. On the other hand, we are seeing the United States getting back to the critic patterns of socialist regions, saying that they are a unique political party regimes limiting personal rights
of their citizens. So we are in the middle of a situation. In this situation, it could give rise to a war that none of us want, but it is there, latent, because we see how the international forces are promoting weapons and all this conflicts between the U.S. and the increasing power of China. So with this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.